talking about suicide and stuff like that, so fair warning. There's no one right way to respond to suicide or suicide attempts. There are wrong ways, like assuming people do it purely for attention or preventing yourself from working through your emotions. And when the immediate aftermath of Maya's suicide attempt comes up, I feel many falsely categorize some of the reactions as being in this latter category, namely Miles and Tristan's responses. When the gang finds out about what Maya tried to do, they gather in the ER waiting room for news of her condition. After Kitty confirms Maya would pull through and most everyone disperses, Miles mentions to Zoe and Tristan that
I can't help but think if things had gone slightly differently this semester, I might have been being there.
After Zoe briefly comforts him, Tristan proposes that they get pizza as it has literally been 6 months since he last had some. If you divorce all the context around what Miles and Tristan say, then it does sound like that they're being selfish and making Maya's situation about them, or worse, trying to steal attention from her. That they don't really care that Maya almost died and they are just looking for someone to pay attention to them. Emphasis on divorcing those statements of context though, because when you consider the scene in its entirety, these assertions are baseless. Starting with Miles, he's not making Maya's suicide attempt about him. He's empathizing with how she must have felt by reflecting on the pain that has taken him to dark places. He's gaining insight into what might have led Maya to this point through considering times when he thought about ending it all and found that there was a point like that for him disturbingly recently. Through his empathy, he's learning how poorly he truly was doing this season. And it's honestly frightening to realize how close he was to being the one in the ER getting his stomach pumped. It's only natural to search through your own experiences to relate to others. Finding commonalities is a significant way that we build connections. Having sympathy is one thing, but when you try to empathize with someone, that involves putting yourself in their position and imagining what the world is like from their perspective. And in doing so, you'll inevitably draw comparisons from your own life to viscerally understand what they're experiencing far past just logically knowing that they're sad, hurt, etc. It's also important to note that he waited until the situation allowed him to mention this connection he's made. Miles only stated this after he was assured Maya would be okay and after he was in the presence of only the two closest people in his life. People he could share his personal revelations with, not those who he wouldn't typically grant access to such deep thoughts like Zig or Grace. If he was truly trying to make the situation about him, Miles would have said it in their presence too before they learned about Maya's condition. A good comparison comes from one of my all-time favorite films, The Breakfast Club. In a scene aptly titled Group Therapy in my DVD copy, Andy reveals his father is a pile of feces. Practically everything he does is for the sake of pleasing his father, who is never satisfied with anything his son accomplishes. His dad only seems to care about winning to the point of only seeming to be capable of lecturing Andy on how he's not a winner. That he has to continually work harder and live up to the constantly moving goalposts of expectations in order to deserve love from his father. And seeing his own experience with his own dad in Andy's words, Bender says,
I think your old man and my old man should get together and go bowling.
Not because he's trying to bring the discussion back to his horrible home life, but as a gesture of camaraderie through pain and a morbidly funny dispersal of tension. Brian does the same when he brings up his own struggle with parental expectations. These seemingly mishmash of unrelated types of teenagers are finding they're not alone through shared hardship. Some of them have seen darker shadows than others, but they all found connection in their individual struggles. And on to Tristan, it's very important that his proposition came after Miles voicing his scary revelation because he's trying to diffuse the tension of it and intense emotions over Maya's suicide attempt. Now that they all know that she's going to live, there's not much else they can do until she's conscious. If they continue to sit in the waiting room or go home to wallow in sadness, nothing will be accomplished. They won't be helping Maya or even themselves. What they can do, however, is perform self-care. Help each other to cope and get through tonight, and then be ready to aid Maya as well when the time comes. Tristan asks to get pizza as a way to distract Zoe and Miles from the intensity of the situation. Have them focus on him rather than let them get wrapped up in dangerous darkness. And we know they haven't fully moved on even after agreeing to go for food. Their gaiety and lighthearted comments are hollow, and yet, it's a welcome start towards moving into the recovery stage. Work through the trauma of learning someone they know tried to kill herself, and be ready to help her get better. As many of us know, it's near impossible to properly support others when we need support ourselves. On top of that, while recognizing our darker emotions is vitally important to our health, it's just as pressing to not sink too deeply into them. Spending too much time in the void is a recipe for another case like Maya's. As I said, there's no one right way to react to suicide or attempts at it. There are notably terrible ways to, but Miles and Tristan's aren't guilty of this. There's no way to be an automaton when you find out that someone you know tried to kill themselves. Yes, they obviously are in a terrible state and will continue to need help, but so do you, because such an experience is traumatic. Even if it's something simple as going for pizza with friends, you need to do some self-care. Again, if you take away all of the context and leave only their statements, then this accusation would seem apt. But if you need to ignore relevant information to support your claim, then it's baseless. Voice only video this time because my recording space is currently occupied. If for some reason you happen to like this video and you want to see more from me, don't trust YouTube or Twitter, because apparently I can't automatically post my videos to Twitter anymore. Thanks, YouTube. Instead, follow this Discord invite link. You'll have access to a content stream of things that I and my friends are involved with. There you can also talk to me in my NotAVampyre crypt. And if you still want to keep up with me on Twitter, you can find me at NotAVampyre. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and until next time.